My name is Guadalupe Hine. I was 38 the night my marriage ended, quietly, violently, and all at once, without a single plate being thrown. People always imagine betrayal as noise, screaming, slamming doors, tears so loud the neighbors hear. Mine was worse. Mine was silence. I built my company from nothing. Not inherited money, not family connections, just stubbornness, caffeine, and the kind of obsession that makes you forget to eat until your hands start shaking. It was a software company, the kind that starts as an idea scribbled on a napkin and turns into a team of 40 people, then 80, then a boardroom where your name sits on glass. My co-founder was Lena Cross. We met when I was freelancing at a co-working space, and she was pitching an idea to anyone who would listen. She was sharp, fearless, the type who could walk into a room of men twice her age and make them feel like they were behind schedule. We coded late into the night in our first office, a glorified storage unit with 2 folding tables and a heater that worked only when it felt like it. I still remember the smell: warm plastic, cheap noodles, the faint burn of overheated laptops. I held a controlling stake, just over 50%, enough to keep the steering wheel in my hands, even when outside money started coming in. After our Series A, everything got structured. Investor protective bylaws, independent board seats, consent rights for executive changes. I was still CEO, still the face, still the engine, but I couldn't rearrange the board or make major governance moves without notice and a formal vote. Day to day, I was in charge. But the company wasn't just my baby anymore, it was a machine, and machines have rules. I tell you that because it matters later, when the betrayal stops being personal and starts being strategic. I used to be calm, dry humor, low drama, the kind of person who could watch a server crash at 2 a.m. and still speak in complete sentences. I didn't post my life online. I didn't vent. I didn't even like being the center of attention at my own company parties. Then my husband and my business partner decided to turn my life into a story people would whisper about. I met my husband, Elliot, in college. He had this soft charm that made you feel safe, like nothing truly bad could happen as long as he was holding your hand. We got married young. We were proud of it, like it proved we were serious people with serious plans. The early years were simple: tiny apartment, secondhand couch, cheap dinners, where we split one dessert because we were budgeting, but really, we were just broke. We talked about the future like it was a place we could build with bare hands. I wanted kids eventually. Elliot always said, "Not yet." Every year, it was not yet. Every conversation ended with him smiling, kissing my forehead, promising someday. I didn't want to pressure him. I told myself love meant patience. Then the company took off. Once we hit our first major contract, everything started scaling so fast, it felt like riding a bike downhill with no brakes. I traveled more. I stayed late more. I started measuring my weeks in deadlines instead of days. Elliot slowly stepped away from anything resembling routine work. At first, he framed it like a temporary pause. "I'm figuring out my next chapter," he said, as if life was a book and he was being thoughtful about the plot. I supported him. I meant it. I thought we were a team. But his next chapter turned into designer shopping, endless spa appointments, and treating social media like it was his real job. He'd post photos at events, arm looped through mine, captions about how proud he was to support a visionary woman. At parties, he introduced himself like being married to me was an occupation. The truth was, he was bored, and he needed people to know he was living well. And Lena was everywhere. She'd been with me from the beginning. The nights coding, the early investor calls, the ugly stress. Over the years, she became a familiar presence around my home too. Barbecues, late strategy nights, holidays. She'd show up with a bottle of wine and some joke about how I needed to stop working before I turned into a ghost. I trusted her completely. Too much, apparently. Looking back, there were comments I brushed off because they sounded like harmless bitterness. Little remarks about how I had it easy as majority owner, how she did the same work without the same say. Once, after a tense board meeting, she joked, "Must be nice to be untouchable." I laughed like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. One Tuesday, I had a late client meeting scheduled. I was exhausted and honestly just wanted the day to end. 10 minutes before the call, the client canceled. Just like that. A whole evening of stress. Gone. I stared at my screen, feeling the kind of relief that makes you almost lightheaded. I figured I'd use the rare free night to surprise Elliot. I picked up his favorite Italian takeout, mushroom ravioli he claimed felt like a hug. I remember thinking, stupidly, that maybe we'd eat together and talk like we used to. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw Lena's car parked out front. I didn't think anything dramatic. I assumed she was dropping off documents, or maybe she was waiting to talk about a project. We were in the middle of a product rollout. It wouldn't have been unusual. But the house felt quiet when I walked in. Not peaceful quiet, not nobody's home quiet. It was that stretched stillness where you can tell people are already somewhere else. I wasn't sneaking. I walked through the front door like I always did, takeout bag in hand. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the hallway. Then I heard laughter upstairs. Soft music, too. Every step up the stairs felt heavier, like gravity had gotten personal. The bedroom door was cracked open just enough that I could see the edge of the bed, the movement, the shape of Lena's hair. My brain didn't explode. It just went silent, like someone flipped a switch and turned off the part of me that made meaning out of life. They weren't together in a panicked, this is a mistake way. They were together like muscle memory. Familiar, comfortable. As if my home had been theirs for a long time. I nudged the door open with my fingertips, just enough to let it make that small, awful sound against the frame. That sound cut through whatever fantasy they were living in. They froze at the same time. For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Lena scrambled like a trapped animal, reaching for her clothes so fast she almost tripped. Elliot reached for the blanket, not to cover himself, but to cover his expression, like shame was something you could hide under fabric. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I didn't do anything dramatic enough to give them a story where I was the villain. I just said evenly, "Put your clothes on. Lena, you need to leave." Lena didn't look at me. She grabbed her things and bolted past me, half-dressed, hair wild, eyes wide like she'd been caught stealing. Elliot came after me downstairs, footsteps too quick, like he was chasing control. I set the takeout bag on the kitchen counter. My hands were trembling, not from tears, but from adrenaline. The smell of mushrooms suddenly felt disgusting, like a joke the universe was playing. Elliot reached the bottom step and, this is the part that still makes my stomach twist, he didn't cry. He didn't apologize. He switched into performance mode. "Guadalupe, wait," he said, voice soft, careful. "Just listen." That was the voice he used when he wanted something. Expensive, unreasonable, urgent. Then he started talking fast, smooth, like he'd practiced in a mirror. According to him, I was never home. I was always working. He'd waited for years. He felt invisible. Lena listened. Lena understood him. Lena made him feel seen. He said it with confidence, as if saying it out loud made it true. I stood there, both hands on the counter, listening to him rewrite our entire history in real time. Am I calm? It bothered him. He kept glancing at my face, hunting for a reaction. When he didn't get one, his tone shifted. The softness vanished. "This is a community property state," he said, chin lifting like he was reading from a contract. "Half of everything you own is mine. Half the house, half the investments, half the company value and support." He actually smirked, like he was waiting for me to panic. I stared at him and said quietly, "You're talking like you didn't sign anything." His face twitched, just a flicker, like a memory tried to surface and he pushed it back down. "What are you even talking about?" he asked too fast. And that's when I realized he genuinely forgot. He forgot the prenup, the one my parents insisted on before we got married, back when Elliot acted offended by the idea, like signing it was an insult to love. He'd signed anyway, with independent counsel, with full knowledge. And inside that agreement was a clause he'd just detonated with his own hands. I didn't explain it. I didn't argue. I didn't give him anything to work with. I picked up my wallet and keys. "I'm not running away," I said, calm enough to terrify even myself. "I'm giving you space for the night. I'll be back tomorrow. And I'm not abandoning the house, so don't bother trying that angle." He opened his mouth, another speech ready. I could see it. I walked out before he could deliver it. I checked into the first hotel near my office that had a room available. No drama, no grand escape. The moment I sat on the bed, the quiet hit me. Not emotional quiet. The kind where your brain runs out of commentary and all you can see is the image you can't unsee. Elliot, Lena, in my bed, like it belonged to them. I opened my laptop and pulled up the prenup from my email archive. My parents' formality, my old embarrassment, my new lifeline. I read the clauses slowly, line by line, until the truth settled into my bones. He didn't just cheat. He torched his leverage. And somewhere inside me, The wife part shut down. The CEO part took the wheel. Because I wasn't walking into a marriage discussion anymore. I was walking onto a battlefield. I didn't sleep. Not because I was crying or pacing or staring at the ceiling in some cinematic spiral. I just lay there, fully awake, staring at the faint glow of the hotel smoke detector, replaying the scene upstairs with mechanical precision. The way Lena moved like she belonged there. The way Elliot didn't even try to deny it. There was something worse than the betrayal itself. It felt organized. At 6 in the morning, I stopped pretending rest would come and reached for my phone. I called Sabine Holt, my attorney. She picked up on the second ring, voice steady, alert, like she'd already sensed something had gone wrong. I didn't give her details. I didn't need to. I said, I caught my husband with my business partner last night. I need you. There was a pause, half a breath at most. Then she said, do not talk to either of them without me present. Do not argue. Do not explain. Do not negotiate. I sat up, the sheet sliding off my shoulder, suddenly very cold. Go quiet, she continued. Silence makes people sloppy. Gather facts. I'll handle the rest. No sympathy, no shock, no indulgence, just structure. That was exactly what I needed. When the call ended, something in me shifted. The wife part, the part that wanted answers, apologies, closure, went completely offline. The CEO part took over. You don't run a company by reacting emotionally. You gather information. You secure assets. You anticipate moves before the other side realizes you've stopped playing defense. They did this in my house, which meant there was a very real chance they'd already been doing it somewhere else. I checked out of the hotel and drove straight home. Elliot's car was gone. Good. I didn't want a scene. I wasn't there to confront him or listen to another speech about how lonely he'd been. I walked straight to my home office. Nothing looked disturbed, no drawers open, no obvious signs of panic. Still, I locked the door behind me. Then I sat down and started resetting everything connected to the company. Email, banking access, internal drives, development servers, cloud permissions, anything Lena had ever touched. I revoked her admin rights quietly. No announcement, no explanation. I didn't block her email or phone number. I wanted to see what she'd do when she realized the door was closed. Halfway through the resets, my phone buzzed. Lena, Guadalupe, this was a mistake. We should talk. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. I didn't reply. I didn't block her. I left it exactly where it was. Sabine had been clear. No contact. Once I finished locking down access, I called her back. She didn't waste time. We need to assume financial exposure, she said. I'm bringing in a forensic accountant, someone meticulous, someone who treats missing dollars like a personal insult. An hour later, I got a call from Piper Wren. Her voice was clipped, efficient. No small talk. She asked for access to reimbursement systems, vendor lists, corporate card statements, travel logs, anything that touched money. I sent everything before she finished her sentence. Honestly, I expected her to find a few questionable expenses, maybe some lazy receipts. Lena had always been casual with rules, but never enough to alarm me. By early evening, Piper sent a short message. One vendor name. It didn't match anything we'd ever used. It was tied to something called a regional tech symposium that didn't exist. She flagged it for follow-up. By the next morning, there was a second vendor. Another fake conference. Another clean invoice. Too clean. These are tidy in a way real travel never is, Piper wrote. Real expenses are messy. When she overlaid the payments with Lena's claimed travel dates, the pattern settled into place like a bad puzzle snapping together. Cities didn't match. Dates overlapped. Locations repeated in ways that made no sense. Someone was siphoning money and hiding it under bad lies. That was the moment the realization hit me. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't boredom or impulse or midlife panic. This was theft. My business, my company, had been funding their relationship. I was sitting with Piper's findings open on my screen when Elliot came home that night. He didn't knock. He didn't hesitate. He walked into my office like he still owned the place, arms crossed, wearing that practiced expression he used whenever he wanted to win an argument through confidence alone. You know this divorce is going to ruin you, he said. You think you're safe because you walked out last night. You're not. I didn't look up. Half of everything is mine, he continued, voice rising slightly. Half the company, half the house. You think your board is going to back you when they hear how you treated your own husband? I stayed quiet. He mistook silence for weakness. You can't prove anything, he said, stepping closer. No recordings, no evidence. So maybe think before you do something stupid. I finally looked at him. I don't need a movie, I said evenly. I need a trail. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound echoed wrong in the room, like he was performing for an audience that wasn't there. You're delusional, he said, shaking his head. You think you're smarter than this. He walked out, muttering under his breath, probably expecting I'd chase him, argue, beg. I didn't move. I stayed in my chair long after midnight, rereading Piper's notes until my eyes felt dry and gritty. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I'm Lena's husband. I've been collecting proof. We need to talk. The situation didn't just escalate. It widened. We met the next morning at a small cafe near the hospital where he worked. When I walked in, he was already there, hands wrapped around a paper cup like he needed something to anchor him. He didn't look fragile. He looked exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that comes from weeks of living on suspicion and confirmation. I don't want sympathy, he said before I sat down. I want the truth, and I want consequences. He slid a thick folder across the table. Inside were screenshots, hotel confirmations, time-stamped photos, location logs, messages between Elliot and Lena that made my stomach turn. The affair wasn't months old. It had been going on for years. And the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. They hadn't just fallen into each other. They had planned everything. And I was the obstacle. By the time I left the cafe, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't broken anymore. It was armored. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth had weight. We didn't sit there in silence. Lena's husband, Marcus, didn't give me time to spiral, and I was grateful for that. He wasn't there to process emotions. He was there to finish something. This isn't everything, he said, tapping the folder lightly. This is just the part that proves the affair. He reached into his bag and pulled out a second stack of documents, thicker than the first. The edges were worn, corners soft like they'd been handled too many times. These, he said, are the parts she never meant for you to see. Emails, drafts, meeting notes, investor contact logs. I flipped through them slowly, the way you do when you already know the truth, but your brain still needs proof to accept it. My name appeared again and again, not as a partner, not as a founder, not as a person. As a problem, an obstacle. In one email, Lena described me as overextended. In another, Elliot suggested I was emotionally compromised. There were bullet points about positioning, tone, timing. They weren't just sleeping together. They were rehearsing my removal. Marcus leaned back, watching my face carefully, like he expected something to crack. Anger, tears, shock. But what I felt was a tightening, like a wire being pulled taut inside my chest. They planned a board ambush, Marcus said quietly. Fast vote. Question your leadership. Make it messy before you could respond. I closed the folder. On paper, they could try. Our voting agreement allowed the board to remove a CEO for cause with a supermajority that included investor directors. I still own the most stock, but replacing board members takes time. Notice. Formalities. In a surprise move, they could destabilize everything before I had the chance to unwind it. They weren't just trying to take my marriage. They were trying to take my company. I didn't swear. I didn't slam the table. I just nodded. Everything in this folder goes straight to my attorney, I said. Every file, every timestamp. Marcus agreed immediately. He wasn't interested in revenge. He wanted accountability, precision, consequences that stuck. I respected that. I called Sabine the moment I stepped outside the cafe. I have something you're going to enjoy, I said. She didn't ask questions. She told me where to meet her. An hour later, I was sitting in her office while she flipped through the documents with surgical focus. Her expression didn't change much, just a slight sharpening around the eyes when she reached the emails about the board coup. This is leverage, she said, not because it's dramatic, because it's organized. She began sorting the pages into neat stacks, grouping them by date and category. Your husband and your business partner conspired against you personally and financially, she continued. We run this on parallel tracks. Civil divorce and criminal referral, each on its own merits. She said it like she was explaining a commute route. Before I left, Sabine filed a criminal referral with the district attorney's intake unit. She attached the evidentiary packet and queued everything for review. Then she made one phone call to Elliot's attorney. Her voice stayed calm, professional. We've referred the financial misconduct to prosecutors, she said. Your client's prompt cooperation and restitution will be noted separately. Here are the civil terms. That was it. No threats, no dramatics. Just facts. The fallout hit Elliot faster than he expected. His lawyer didn't call him first, made him come into the office. Sit down. Listen. I wasn't there, but I know how it went. Sabine forwarded me the follow-up email later. Elliot's reaction was described as volatile to the point of irrational. The prenup was valid. The infidelity clause was active. The claims he'd bragged about, half the company, half the house, ongoing support, collapsed on contact. Less than 30 minutes after that meeting, Elliot drove home like he meant to break pavement. He didn't knock. He stormed into my office, slamming the door open like force alone could change reality. "This isn't fair," he shouted. "Do you understand what I gave up for you?" I didn't stand. "You didn't give up a career," I said calmly. "You gave up effort." That sent him pacing, hands flying, voice rising. He listed every sacrifice he'd made, events he attended, dinners he hosted, appearances he maintained. When yelling didn't work, he softened, sat on the edge of my desk, reached for my arm. "Guadalupe," he whispered, "we can fix this." I moved his hand away. "Don't!" That's when the tears came, loud, messy, designed to overwhelm. Then rage again. "You're cold," he spat. "You're disgusting." I finally looked him in the eye. "Then you file for divorce," I said. "You don't file for my replacement." He recoiled, not in pain, but in wounded ego. Sabine called right then. I answered with Elliot still in the room. "It's moving," she said. "The case is open. Expect action soon." Elliot froze. 3 days later, the action arrived. I was in a meeting when security buzzed me. Law enforcement was in the lobby. They walked Lena out in cuffs. No scene, no shouting, just the quiet collapse of someone who thought she was smarter than consequences. When Elliot read the internal notice, his face drained of color. "They're arresting her," he whispered. "For what?" He already knew. That night, he tried to rewrite the story online. Long post, victim narrative, tagged my company. By morning, the comments were full of receipts. And the truth, quiet, documented, undeniable, started doing what it always does. It spread. By the time the sun came up, Elliot's version of the story was already collapsing. He had posted late at night, counting on emotion and timing to do the work for him. A long, winding essay about betrayal, abandonment, and one mistake that supposedly destroyed his life. He tagged my company. He tagged mutual friends. He framed himself as the loyal husband cast aside by a cold, power-hungry wife. For a few hours it worked. Sympathetic comments rolled in, heart emojis, messages telling him to stay strong. Then the questions started. Someone asked why a regional tech symposium listed in his post didn't exist. Another commenter posted a blurred screenshot of a vendor invoice and wrote, "Ask him why this company isn't real." Within an hour, the tone shifted. Receipts began appearing like dominoes tipping over, travel dates that didn't line up, hotel confirmations, a lease record for a condo in a neighboring town, screenshots of messages joking about billing date nights as company expenses. Elliot deleted the post. Too late. Screenshots were everywhere. By midday, his name had turned radioactive. Friends who had defended him quietly removed their comments. People stopped returning his calls. His carefully constructed image cracked under the weight of evidence he couldn't talk his way out of. And that was just the public side. Behind the scenes, things were worse. Piper's forensic work uncovered skimming that predated the affair. Small amounts, spread out over years, designed not to trigger alarms. It showed intent, pattern, planning. Under our shareholder agreement, there was a bad actor clause. If a founder committed fraud, the company could force a repurchase of their shares at a formula price, fair value minus misconduct penalties and restitution offsets. Sabine executed it without hesitation. The court enforced it. Lena lost her stake. Her lawyer didn't fight. They were too busy trying to contain the criminal damage. The divorce hearing came faster than Elliot expected. He walked into the courtroom with his chin high, hair styled perfectly, like confidence alone could sway a judge. It couldn't. His attorney tried the duress argument, claimed Elliot had been pressured into signing the prenup, that he hadn't understood what he agreed to. The judge listened politely, then turned to Sabine. Sabine didn't perform. She laid out facts like arithmetic, independent counsel, voluntary signature, enforceable infidelity clause. Then, for limited purpose only, she introduced select financial exhibits, not to argue criminal guilt, just to establish marital waste and credibility. The judge nodded once. Ruling delivered. Prenup enforced. Business assets excluded. Support capped at the minimum. No ongoing payments. No sympathy. No softness. Elliot broke, not quietly. He sobbed, loud and theatrical, looking around the courtroom like someone might rescue him from reality. No one did. When it was over, Sabine packed her folder like she'd just finished a routine meeting. Outside the courthouse, Elliot spotted Lena's husband standing near the steps. He stormed toward him, rage barely contained. "You ruined my life," Elliot spat. Marcus didn't flinch. "No," he said evenly. "You did that yourself." Elliot turned away, jaw tight, already rehearsing the next lie he'd tell someone else. But the walls were closing in, and there was nowhere left to perform. Elliot didn't disappear after court. He tried to rebrand. New profile photos, vague posts about healing and self-love, a soft launch of a new relationship with a flashy finance guy who paraded him through rooftop bars and expensive restaurants, each post designed to suggest he was still winning. Most people ignored it. A few mocked it. He kept posting anyway. Silence would have meant admitting defeat. 3 months later, the second scandal hit. His new boyfriend was under federal investigation for running an investment scam. Fake returns, borrowed credibility, evaporated savings. When authorities raided the penthouse at dawn, they seized everything tied to the scheme. Elliot was questioned later that day. Not arrested, not charged, yet. But his fingerprints were all over the messages recruiting new investors. His one-time divorce payout vanished into legal fees and seized assets. That night he called me. He sobbed before he even said hello. "Guadalupe, please," he begged. "You know who I really am." I didn't raise my voice. "You spent my best years performing," I said calmly, "and my worst years plotting. Call your lawyer." I hung up. The next day, Marcus posted one sentence online under a thread dissecting both scandals. They didn't fall in love. They conspired. That line traveled farther than anything Elliot had written in months. People believed it because Marcus never embellished. He only ever shared facts. As for me, I stayed quiet. The company stabilized. Revenue held. The office felt clean again. I stopped waking up with my jaw clenched. I started seeing someone new. Not a whirlwind, not a spectacle. A steady, grounded man who had his own life and his own goals. He didn't care about optics. He cared whether I ate lunch, whether I slept. Life didn't explode upward. It leveled out. And that peace was worth more than anything I'd lost. Elliot faded from my world, not because I blocked him, but because he ran out of stages. In the end, he demanded half, like I owed him a trophy. I handed him the invoice he'd been dodging, and I walked forward without looking back.